Welcome to my Wellness Spring podcast show. Today, I'm thrilled to chat with Kate Magic, a trailblazer in the raw food movement, visionary educator, and holistic wellness pioneer. She's authored 9 transformative books, including UK's first ever raw food recipe book, and her latest book, The Empowered Woman, a holistic guide to understanding feminine energy, has been published since our chat. So join us today as we explore her journey, conscious living, and how she inspires vibrant, high vibrational lifestyles worldwide. Welcome, Kate, to Wellness Spring. It's so lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you for inviting me, Beverly. It's lovely to speak with you today.
Yeah, I can't believe it was 2017. That's 8 years ago that you did an event in Monaco, and that's where we first met.
Right. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I was doing a lot of pop-up dinner parties at the time, so.
Yeah, well, you did an amazing event in the organic juice bar in Monaco,
Yeah.
and unfortunately that closed down. However, yeah, I was just everybody was blown away with your work. I was probably one of the very few vegans in Monaco at the
Right.
time. And yeah, I used to run well, Djokovic, as you know, is vegan, and I used to run a ladies' lunch there once a
Oh,
month. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, I'm not going to eat vegan food," but it's about how you word it and how you
yeah.
describe it. And I also got a chef who was very popular, doing monthly vegan fusion dinner parties. And people said the same, "Oh, should I eat before I come?" And I was like, "Look, just come, you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
It's not just a bowl of lettuce. You're going to have very interesting food," and it was Asian fusion. So, and after the first night, we were fully booked, and people were paying for the 12 weeks because they
Oh,
wanted
good.
to secure their spot. Because I said to people, if you can do a good sauce, you're set up for life. Everybody will love you. You can put it with your meat or chicken or fish
Right.
or just your vegetables, whatever you want. But yeah, so it was such a delight to see you in Monaco. And I know you've skyrocketed even further since. So for our listeners, do you want to tell us how your wellness journey began?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it seems like a long time ago now. But I think I've just always been interested in health, so I think it was just my calling. I didn't I grew up in a very conventional household with conventional foods, completely normal lifestyle. But it never felt right to me. I never felt, that this was the right way to live. So I left home very young and started on my journey very young, became vegetarian as soon as I was able, became vegan about a year or two after that, and then moved into being raw foods. Yeah, again, straight away. It's just this is the food I like. So, a lot of times people say, oh, well, must have a lot of discipline or it must be difficult, but this is just genuinely the food I like. I don't like the other stuff. I like fruit and I like salads and I like juices and I like coconut water and these are the things that really make me happy. So yeah, it's just what I've always been passionate about.
Yeah, and it was good that you said those were the foods that you liked anyway, because when I was growing up as well, it was meat and 2 potatoes,
Yeah.
and you know, also we had an uncle who had a meat farm, a beef farm, and my grandmother had a chicken farm, and I think from a young age, you get used to having. My father used to grow all our fruit and vegetables,
Oh,
and
really?
nothing, there was no chemicals or anything, and you get used to that lovely, rich taste. And Brian and I, since with COVID, we came over here because we've I've got elderly in-laws and they were desperate for us to come over. So when we could, we did. And we thought we'd be here for a few months because nobody knew at that stage what the craziness would be. And we ended up buying a camper van with the world war happening in Ukraine. It was like, we had our home in France, but it was like, what do we do? And we thought, all right, we'll go traveling for a few months and we'll escape all the lockdowns here in the
Yeah,
different states.
yeah,
And then we got devastated, heartbroken with the state of the land. It was so degraded and, you know, through various reasons. And then life took me on a different trajectory. So I've been working with Archangel Raphael ever since, doing healings on the land every day. And
amazing.
then the universe brought us to the picture where you can see behind the land here. And I just feel, it's my calling because since I was young, I've been clairvoyant and I've listened to my intuition and gone wherever the universe drives me. And I just think, now is the time for people to form
Yeah.
communities, go back to nature. And I know you feel like that as well. But so can you tell us, a bit about yourself? Because I know you've written so many books, and I read today that you're also a Reiki master
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that you do quantum healing. So can you tell us about that part of your journey and also how, you started? Because I believe you sell food in different shops in London as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I do a lot of things, and I don't know, to maybe it's other people, maybe it seems like a lot of different things, but to me it's all the same thing, which is just working with energy and working with frequency and, just really, I think the whole process that we're in is, when people talk about spiritual things, there's a kind of sense of it being out there somewhere and kind of separate from us. And really, the whole spiritual process is an embodiment process. So it's about how we inhabit our bodies, how we fully present in our bodies. And that, to me, that is what healing is. Healing is presence. So how do we have this right relationship with our bodies? Because our bodies are nature. Our bodies are part of that divine intelligence, that natural intelligence. So, all the time at the moment, people are talking about saving the planet and the things we have to do. And I think that really begins within. It begins with our relationship to our bodies and primarily as well, the relationship with the food that we eat. There's nothing that will change the world more than people changing their relationship with the food. Like you just mentioned, most of the land is used for agricultural purposes, which isn't our primal diet, and it's not the natural state of the land. So the more we find like what is our really natural diet, we're also helping to restore the ecology at the same time. So we're restoring the relationship to ourselves, we're restoring the relationship to the divine, and we're healing the earth at the same time.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned microbiology as well, because, I say to people, as within, so without, which is what you're saying.
Yeah,
And, if we don't look at the land, I know the land is dying, and having talked to lots of microbiologists, soil biologists, and scientists, some are saying there's only like 20 crops left if we're lucky, unless people make a change. And I truly believe we are what we eat. And I know you were pioneer of raw and vegan in the UK. And, it's about being consciously aware of what you're eating, which is part of the movement I believe that you started. And it's all about love and respect. So, I tell people this is my body. I love it. It's the only one I got on this lifetime. So it's like having a Ferrari, for example, in Monaco, you'd
yeah,
put the best fuel in.
yeah,
And for me, I like to put the best fuel in my body. And, when people say to me, yes, but, that I can't afford to eat organic. And I was like, well, I can't afford to pay for medications
Yeah,
and long-term, surgeries and things in the future. But I think if everybody ate food, befriended their um, local farmer. I know here in Australia, you can have food delivered boxes, and there's a few places that have opened, like farms within the cities, and children can go there and see what was in there. Because it's funny, like years ago, I know there was a survey done in schools, and they'd say, where does milk come from? The fridge. Where do eggs come from? The fridge. So people weren't in touch, children weren't in touch with where their food really comes from. And
yeah,
like
yeah,
there's so much chemical spraying, and people don't realize it's the highest time now in the world with so much disease from that comorbidities like cancers and heart disease and diabetes and so forth. They don't relate it, and it's heartbreaking, and children under 10, it's the highest in history getting these comorbidities, and then people born a male, for example, and then want to change to be a female. And I've spoken to a fish scientist, and he's got evidence in the fish that compares to the chemical spraying, and the same is happening with the fish, and he compares it back to humans.
right.
Anyway, um, I'm not sure how big that is in the UK, and I know you travel a lot as well, so you'd be listening to people in different countries. And yeah, so tell us about raw food and how it differs from vegan for the listeners.
Right. So the whole premise of raw foods is that food has life force energy, which we can call chi or prana. It's the electrical energy of the food. And when we heat food above certain temperatures, we're destroying that life force energy. So the idea with raw foods is that you're having the living foods, and then you're getting that life force energy. And there's not actually a lot of science. There's a little bit of science around it, but it's more, I think, an experiential diet, is that people try it, and then once they try it, they really notice the difference. And you kind of, when you're feeling the benefits, when you feel the difference in your body, you don't need the science, because you know that it's working for you. I don't think fully raw is for everyone, because it is a very spiritual diet, and it is, it's in the name raw. It's like you have to be very honest with yourself, and you have to be very honest in your life. And that's a process, because we're trained to, hide a lot of things from ourselves. We're trained to not be true to ourselves. And a lot of people, it's not just something you can do overnight. You can't just it's not the same as vegan, in that you can just transition to vegan and then stay vegan. Most people, for raw, it's a journey. So they might start off doing high raw, and then they might go back to like 50% raw, 50% cooked. A lot of people that are doing raw foods long term will just do like 70, 80% raw. So it's not like, if you're vegan and you were eating eggs once a day, you're not a vegan. But with raw foods, to me,
Yeah.
someone who's raw food, if they're committed to eating more than 50% of raw in their diet, on a daily basis. So I don't think it's quite as black and white as veganism, but it's having this, it's having it creates a different relationship to your body and a different relationship to the world, because you're just putting life force energy into your body. So definitely people feel benefits on all areas, like mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. Mental, people find that they have a lot more clarity, a lot more mental clarity, kind of brain fog disappears a lot. Emotional, people feel that they get happier, and that's actually one of the most common things that people say to me, is just, oh, I'm just in a good mood more often. Physical, obviously, there's a lot of research and a lot of evidence of people healing themselves from chronic conditions. Obviously, a lot of that is very suppressed. People like Robert O. Young have been put in jail for talking about this. They do clamp down on people So it's not as widely discussed as we would like. It's not as widely talked about as we would like, because people have to be very careful about what they say. But I have firsthand seen people heal from all kinds of chronic conditions on a raw foods diet. And then spirituals, I keep coming back to, you know, that's really my main focus, I guess, is just this connection to the divine, the connection to the oneness of all that is, and that feeling of yeah, just being whole and being in harmony with the natural order, with the universe. So I think as well to say that there's lots of different ways of doing the raw food diet, and it was something that, you know, I started it in the early 90s, and there wasn't really a raw food movement back then. So I really just learned things by doing it myself and listening to my body and seeing what worked and what didn't work. And then it started getting trendy, I guess, around 2010. It started getting, you know, it became known as a Hollywood diet, kind of like keto or paleo. And they were talking about all the celebrities that did it, and it started getting in the magazines, and people started talking about it. And there was a period around 2012, I would say, where it was very trending, and a lot of people would just, you know, there was a lot more raw food restaurants, more food cafes, loads of raw food books. So my book, Eat Smart, Eat Raw, was the UK's first raw food recipe book. And then by 2012, there was like lots more coming out. So mine came out 2002, and then it was about 10 years later when there was this whole wave of you know, people that were interested in it. But whenever that happens, whenever something becomes a trend, then you know, everything changes. And that's something I'm really interested in as well, is like cycles and waves of energy and movements, and how, you know, nothing ever stays the same. So again, that's how we're kind of trained with our consciousness, is to look in a more linear way and look for just like eternal progress and kind of getting to end points. But the more we're on this spiritual journey, the more we understand that everything is just an ebb and a flow, and everything is cyclical. So we had this kind of wave of interest in raw foods, but then a lot of people were doing raw foods in a not very healthy way. And, you know, terrible food combining, loads of high sugar things, you know, I mean, it was natural sugars, but it's still high sugar, loads of things really difficult for the digestion. It was very common for people to go to raw food restaurants and not feel great afterwards, which is, you know, missing the whole point. It's like, okay, amazing, you can make a raw lasagna or a raw pizza, and that's exciting. But yeah, there was a lot. And then you've got, you know, you've got a lot of different groups within raw foods that will tell you different contradictory things. Like some people say don't eat any fruit, and some people just live on fruit. And, you know, there's all these kind of different, some people really love the superfoods, some people say don't do any superfoods. So even within raw foods, there's so much contradictory evidence. So my advice to people is just try and do 50% raw, which would be, you know, fruit and vegetables, and then just have your 50% of your diet as what you like, what, you know, what you're used to doing. And if you can just do that, like some people do raw to four, where they just have a raw breakfast, raw lunch, you know, just have fruit for breakfast, salad for lunch. If you can just do that, that's a great place to be, you know, and maybe that's what's right for you. I think everyone can benefit from including more raw foods in their diet. I don't think everyone benefits from doing fully raw. And there is, as what happened when it was trending about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there is a lot of danger for people to get quite extreme with it and quite obsessed with it, and then do things that aren't actually that healthy. So it's better to, yeah, it's much better to just eat some cooked broccoli then be like, no, I'm wrong, I can only do this. And then, you know, people are living on imported fruits or whatever. It's not very balanced. So balance is key. Yeah, just if people are doing 50% raw fruit and vegetables, and then 50% whatever else you feel like you want to do, everyone's going to see benefits from that. And then you can decide for yourself if you want to go further along the journey, or if that's where you want to stay for now.
Yeah, well, you covered a lot there. And what jumped out for me was about listening to your body,
Yeah.
because a lot of people, we're living in a fast world, and, you know, people are so busy, overworked, stressed, and
Yeah.
There's lots of fast food outlets, so people just grab and eat on the go.
Yeah.
And I think when I first went to France, I did voluntary work on someone's farm, and she used to have all the dehydrators and
Right.
soak the nuts overnight and everything. And people like, I just haven't got the time, you know. And also living in France, it was very much meat, cheese, and cream. So it was
Yeah.
very difficult to find places. So even if you're not consciously, you know, vegan or raw food, I think people find it difficult to have balance in their life and to find the
Yeah.
time to consciously
Right.
choose
Well,
food for the week.
yeah, raw food is the ultimate fast food because, a pear. I just had pear for
Yeah,
breakfast. I didn't have to do anything. A salad, you
yeah,
can put a salad together in 10 minutes. But also I think, this is when we're talking holistically, this is part of the problem is that we're all too busy going nowhere. That's the problem with Western society.
yeah.
Everyone's rushing around getting nowhere. So we actually do need to slow down to for healing to happen and for the shift to happen in the world that we or want to see. I don't think there's any country in the world right now where they're just happy with their government and everything's going great. Like in
Mm.
every country, there's just mass unrest and people are so dissatisfied with the way things are. And I think we don't look to the governments. We know that they basically are evil. That's my opinion. They're evil. They don't care about us. They just want to rape and pillage the land and the people. And so we have to be the answers. We have to be the solution. So we do that by slowing down, and it's a radical act to say, do you know what, I'm not going to rush around and do this thing and that thing. I'm going to do some self-care, especially for women. I'm going to take some time to take care of myself. I'm going to take some time to make myself a nice nourishing meal or get a massage or go to a sound bath or have a sauna, all these things. And that's how we change things, is by showing up in a different way in the world. We can't expect other people to do it for us.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. And women, you know, are big influencers. And when they lead from their heart, and they're good educators for their children. And I know you've obviously, when I said fast food, I meant McDonald's and things
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. And I guess with raw as well, you've got all the Japanese food with the raw salmon and different things and beef tartare. And so it's not just about being vegan, even though that you promote raw food as being mainly plant-based.
Yeah, I think there is a
Um,
place for raw dairy products for some people. Personally, I'm vegan, but I think raw dairy products, especially goats and sheep's products, cheeses and yogurts, for some people, that is a right choice to make in their diet. So personally, I wouldn't recommend raw meat. Um, there's a lot of problems with that, I think, but raw dairy, I think, does have a place for people. Yeah, if that's what their body needs and craves.
yeah. And I know when I first went vegan, people, which was probably about 30 years ago, people thought I was a bit cuckoo. You know, it's like, oh, you know, you're going to be sick, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. And everybody was really worried about me. And it was like, look, I feel good, I feel alive. Like you're talking about high vibrancy, and you feel it within, and you've got energy. And it's like, I'm not getting sick. Everybody else around me is getting sick, and I'm the only one who's staying healthy. Um, so I think, like you said earlier, listen to your body. But I wanted to ask you, because you had three children and you brought them up vegan, what was that like? Because people would look down on you if you know, and think there's something wrong. You're not getting it. The biggest thing people used to say to me, how do you manage to get your protein? And I'd say, I get a lot more protein in my fresh leafy food than cremated meat and so
Right,
forth.
right. Yeah, well, I had the same experience. People, when I first went raw, people thought I had an eating disorder and that I was going to die. And yeah, I'm like 35 years later or something, I've made a whole living out of it. So that really gives me strength and courage to just listen to my beliefs and, do what I know in my heart to be true. But in terms of raising the kids, then yeah, I mean, I think in life with anything, when you're passionate about it and you believe in it, it's not hard. It's hard if you're not doing what you believe in, but if you're doing what you believe in, you have a strength that comes from that. So I just really, it's really clear. And I think as well that your children, they have your genes. They're gonna have similar, obviously they're their own people, and they're going to go on their own journeys, but they're going to have similarities to you. They're going to have similar likes and dislikes to you. So I knew at that point what worked for me and my body, and I wanted to, pass that on to them. One thing I did do was try and give them as much choice as possible, because I was aware that I was restricting them from a lot of the foods that were widely available. So I was aware there were restrictions in place, but within those restrictions, I wanted to give them as much choice as possible. So I would say to them, like, which vegetable do you want, or which green powder do you want, or which nuts do you want, or so they were making their own choices, and I tried to really instill in them an education around food. So it wasn't like mummy is telling us to do this, but I was trying to educate them on their relationship to food. So things like they would help with the shopping and the unpacking of the shopping, because as adults, we take all this for granted, but just when you're in a shop and then you're seeing where things are placed, you're like, okay, those are the beans, those are the vegetables. They're learning that way by being involved in that process. And then when you're unpacking things, you're learning like, oh, you don't put lemons on top of lettuce because lettuce is fragile. And then having them really involved in the kitchen and like making things themselves in the kitchen. So really trying to get them involved as much as possible. So it was their relationship to the food, not what I was telling them to do. And they have all remained vegan as adults. I mean, obviously they've experimented, but they're all, fully grown men now. I've got three men, and they're all pretty much vegan still, and healthy vegan as well. And that's what's important, is that it's a plant-based diet. It's a fruit and vegetable-based diet. So yeah, they all eat in quite different ways. But they're all really healthy, and they don't really get sick. Yeah, they're all very healthy. We didn't have a GP, a doctor when we were little, and I did check this with them the other day, I think, and I don't think any of them have ever seen a doctor in their lives. And that's not for some like philosophical standpoint, it's that they haven't needed to see a doctor. So I think that says it all, really.
Yeah, well, food, what did the saying, food is your medicine and
Right.
let medicine be your food.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I know that you've studied nutrition and you've mentioned education a few times. And I know you do educational courses on, raw living. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I'm not teaching raw foods really at the moment. Last year, or was it this year? This year, I think, was the first year in like 20 something years that I haven't taught raw foods, because there's not really an interest in it currently. So obviously, I still believe in it and passionate about it, but there's not really a demand for it currently. But like I said, I think everything goes in cycles, and I do see it being a trending
Yeah,
at some point again. So I'm more I do a lot of coaching, health coaching, like individual coaching. But I'm more doing like life coaching. So I have a monthly group called the Actually Magic Group, where we meet once a month, and I just talk about my interpretation of the current energies, the energetic themes of what we're going through currently. So I do a little talk, and then we have a meditation. I do a distance healing, and then we have a sharing circle at the end. So a lot of my work for about 10 years now, I guess, I really love holding space and holding circle, because when I used to teach classes in the early days, it used to be me stood up in a room full of 20 people, talking. And what I always found was that the most interesting bits, well, obviously all of it's interesting, but we get so much out of the conversation and sharing. And I love when we have sharing circles and everyone gets to see an aspect of themselves reflected in everyone else. So, someone might not be going through what you're going through, but you can see how that was something that you went through in the past, or maybe one of your friends or family members is going through it. And I just love how, I think this is one of the big problems that we're in currently, is, as you mentioned already, is the kind of division everywhere, and that we're so
Yeah.
isolated. We're meant to try and do everything by ourselves all the time. So I love just bringing like-minded people together and holding space for that and having everyone share. So yeah, we always end our monthly calls with a sharing circle where people get to discuss, from a kind of spiritual perspective of what's coming up for them and how they're coping with the energies. And then we see the commonality of the themes, because I think as well, especially as women, we tend to internalize and we tend to think, oh, I must be doing something wrong. This is something that I'm going through. And then you see someone else is going through something that you can relate to, and you're like, oh, it's because it's the solar eclipse, or
Yeah.
it's January and we all feel like this in January, or whatever that is. So yeah, I do a lot of that. I'm still doing the retreats. I do this year I did a retreat in Bali and a retreat in Egypt as well. So I'm working a lot in Egypt at the moment. We'll be going back to Egypt again next year. I haven't fixed the dates yet, but really in love with Egypt. It's I think one of the most powerful places, if not the most powerful place on the planet. So yeah, we're doing a lot of work in the pyramids with the sacred stones there. And then Bali, yeah, I've had a home in Bali I've been going to Bali for 8 years now. So again, Bali is a very deeply spiritual place where prayer and ceremony are just part of how they live. It's not, like in the West, we might go shopping. They go to the temple. It's just they do ceremony every day. And I really love being nourished by that environment where the spiritual aspect of life is very much embroidered into the day-to-day, is very much threaded through the day-to-day life. So yeah, again, a very, very special place. So my next retreat is in Bali in January.
Oh,
January. Yeah, yeah. We do
might
it.
have to see if I can pop over
Yes,
because so
yes,
close in Australia. And
yes.
you're always welcome to come here. I know everybody would love you to come here. Like recently I was in Byron and we're promoting an event to educate people on what's really in your food
Right.
and we can stay healthy and healthy soil, healthy people, healthy climate. And there's a few organic stores in and plant-based cafes and restaurants in Byron Bay, and they're all going, oh, come up here and do the event, come up here and do the event. So there's a big movement in Byron area especially,
Yeah.
and like when we were chatting earlier, I mentioned there's a lot of farms popping up in town, like urban farms where
Right.
children can go there and, they grow all their own plants and vegetables and they've got shops where they sell it and people can do voluntary work. So that it's slowly happening. So
Yeah.
yeah. But I love the way that you talked about the sharing, because when you talked about the people, the cultural people in Bali, because when you look through history, all the tribes used to have circles,
Right.
and some of them would pass like a pebble or something around,
Right.
and you'd have that space to share and be listened and heard both by
Yeah.
yourself and by others. And I think it's so important today with the separation because with our travels as well, we've noticed the amount of depression.
Yeah.
There's a lot of suicide. What I didn't know, once every 10 days, a farmer commits suicide.
Wow.
And it's the same throughout different backgrounds as well. Suicide is very high. Just like I came from Bridgend in South Wales, and not long after I left, we heard about suicide, and before we knew it, it was the highest case of suicide in Europe, and they don't even talk
Wow.
about it now
Wow.
because they don't want to bring attention. It's about all different backgrounds as well. But yeah, it's about, people are isolated, and when, things happen in globally that some people like, some people agree with, some people don't. Called separation. Everything is about separation. So we need to bring community back.
Yeah.
And like you were saying about slow down and look within. And then when you come from that space, you know what people and what things you want to invite in your life
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
be around. But it's wonderful you're doing these online retreats as well because, I say to people, if you can't find something where you are, check online.
Yeah.
And then if there's nothing, because you have to, make an effort, you have to take that leap. And if there's nothing happening in your area, start something, even if it's a knitting club or,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, anything, whatever you're passionate about, because you said with the food, when you change, you ate things that you really liked.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's about doing things that you like and then finding like-minded people.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's so important to feel that high vibrational energy. So can you talk us through what would be a typical session with you? And I also want you to give clarity on, because when I talk about raw food, people will go, oh, but it's cold. And what about in the winter? You can't eat cold food. And I know I had a lovely Thai curry with you. So if you could explain that, that would be great.
Yeah. Did you mean a coaching session? Talk through a coaching
Yeah,
session? Yeah. So
yeah,
this is something I'm really passionate about as well, actually, is the therapeutic relationship, because I think that's one of the things, again, that's really missing from our culture. I guess it's the same kind of a thing, really. But, historically, like you were saying, we would have sat around the fire and shared in that way. We also all had our healer. You had someone who was in your village who knew your parents' health, who had probably seen you since a baby, who'd seen you grow up, and they knew your body and they knew your health. And so when you had a problem, you could go to them because they understood you on a very personable level. And we don't have that anymore. So, when you in the UK, if you have a GP appointment, they're allowed 15 minutes. That's all they're allowed to see you. That's a typical GP appointment. You can't do anything if it, you can barely say hello. 15 minutes. Um, so we're missing this whole therapeutic relationship. And what happens now is a lot of people are moving away from conventional medicine, allopathic medicine, and they're looking for alternatives, but then they're trying to be their own healer. And they're looking stuff up online, and they might go and like dip in and like do one coaching session here or one session there. But what we all need is that person that really knows us and is really our rock that we can lean on in a therapeutic setting. So I always begin by taking a very detailed intake form, and I think that's really paramount for any holistic practitioner. Is, it should take you about an hour to fill out my intake form, because I want to know everything. I want to know everything about your
yeah,
health history and your parents, and then I can start to join the dots. It's like being a detective, so you see the puzzle pieces, and most of the time it's very common issues. It all starts in the gut usually, or you can see as a
yeah,
detective. I put my detective hat on and I can see, okay, well, they might be complaining of this, but I can start to see, well, the root issue is here. And also the other thing that I do, which is fairly unique, I think, is that I look at things in a very holistic way. So my approach is, once we have our first session, I'll offer you a combination of, dietary advice based on where you are. I'm never going to say to someone, oh, you have to be 100% raw. It's always like, well, seeing what they're eating now and how they can make gradual improvements on that. Supplements, but then also we include things like affirmations and lifestyle techniques. A lot of times it's just saying to people, just stay in bed a bit more, just spend more time in nature. It's very simple things, but it's a lot of times we need someone else to give us permission to do that, because we're caught on this hamster wheel of feeling like, well, I have to work so hard and I'm doing all these things and I don't know why I'm feeling so tired. And, you know, you maybe just need someone else to give you that permission slip to say the reason you're struggling is because you're not resting enough. So it's not that you're not good enough at what you're doing, but you're just trying to do too much. And that's, you know, that's the pressures of modern life. So a lot of times it's very simple. But yeah, I do look at, you know, like the energetic things and the emotional things as well as the physical things, and try and package it all up together. And then to answer your other question, well, yeah, that is a common misconception, but actually there's a bit of debate around it, but the generally accepted temperature at what food stops being raw when the life force energy is destroyed is around 45 degrees centigrade, which is the temperature of a hot tub. So actually you can still have warm foods and not they've still got that life force energy. So in the colder months I would maybe I make a broth. I do that a lot, where I make a broth with things like turmeric and ginger and miso. And then I make maybe some courgette noodles and some kimchi and stuff. And I just pour the warm broth over the raw foods. Or you can just heat stuff really gently. So you can heat it so it's not cooked, but it's just warm. I have a lot of warm drinks as well. So I drink a lot of teas and like lattes, you know, usually I use coconut as the creamer. But yeah, like medicinal mushrooms and adaptogen and hot drinks. So yeah, I think it is important if people are in a cold climate. I think it is really important to get those warming foods in, and it's also important to be able to sweat, because you need to detox. So if someone's in a cold climate, they need to go to a hot yoga class or get in a sauna or just some kind of activity where they're really breaking a sweat.
Yeah, that's really good advice. In Nice in France, I used to love going to the Bikram hot yoga, which
Right.
was just across from me, to have a good sweat. And talking about detox, when you were talking earlier about your retreats, or when people first change over to raw foods, you know, they have that transformation. And, you know, years ago that people were just doing the juicing, and, you know, there's still lots of people doing juicing now. But the main thing they come away with, it's like they've had a transformational experience, you know. And if they've never, you've talked about spirituality a lot, you know, it's like having an awakening, you
Yeah,
know, it's truly magical. And I think when you have that beautiful awakening, it's really hard to go back.
exactly.
However, because we're creatures of habit, because you do it for a weekend or a week when you're in an environment where everybody's, you know, doing the same thing and they're loving and supportive, when you go back to your normal environment, then people are eating differently and you get back in the busyness. It's easy to slip into the old ways. So, what advice would you give to people to change their habits
Yeah, well, that's what I
and
said
keep
before.
them?
It's it's
Yeah,
it's definitely a journey, and it is cyclical. And you know, it's I think anyone who's achieved anything in life will look back at their journey and go, well, it was one step forward, two steps back a lot of the time. It's just, you
yeah,
know, that is how we make progress. It's just not giving up. It's just remaining committed to something and believing in it and not giving up. But I think it's understanding that um failure isn't failure because it's part of the process, that it's just normal for people to have those ups and downs. And as long as you're like, okay, you know, it's having self-love as well, compassion. So, you know, okay, well, I understand that I had that relapse because I was really stressed at work or because I was really stressed in my relationship, and now I'm going to try again and do better. Because you have to unpack that's what I was saying before, you have to unpack the emotional and spiritual aspect of things as well, because most people are using food as a suppressor to suppress their emotions, to stop them feeling everything that's coming in.
yeah,
So you have to, you know, it is a process, and it takes everyone years. You know, I would say if someone actually really desires to be fully raw, it's going to be a 10-year journey, minimum, you know, to actually get to that place, because
yeah,
it's just a process. It's like yoga, you know, it really is like yoga. You don't stand on a yoga mat and do yoga once and then say, okay, I've done yoga. Anyone that does yoga understands it's a practice. And, you know, that's part of the magic of yoga, is that you can come to the same mat in the same body day in, day out, and you feel different. in each posture every time, that it feels like a different down dog or savasana or whatever it is every time. So it's being open to the experience and open to the relationship, and just listening to the wisdom of your body, listening to the messages that are coming up for you. You know, is it a childhood trauma memory that's coming up? Is it something in your life currently that you're feeling really blocked at that's coming up? And you can choose to suppress that with food and drugs, or you can choose to look at it and do the healing work and release it out of your body. And then you don't need to go back to those foods anymore. But it's not an easy journey. You know, anyone that takes this journey is brave. And, you know, that's what I always tell people: you're brave just for showing up on this path, because it's not easy. And you have to acknowledge that for yourself, that doing the work takes a lot of strength. Yeah.
And I think it was good that you mentioned earlier, you know, people are looking to self-diagnose. They might look online, but you don't know if it's the right advice that you're getting online. And I think it's so important to visit someone like you with many, many years of experience. And you mentioned yoga. I know you teach that as well. And I think everything is holistic. So, you know, what might work for me might not work for you, even though we've got similar backgrounds and trainings. We're completely different people, and we've had different upbringings. And you talked about traumas, you know, what might be a trauma for me would be nothing for you. You'd laugh it off and carry on. So, you know, I think it's really important, like you say, when we look at our ancestors and the ancients, they've always had someone in the back leading them. All of us need, you know, if you're in business, you'll have a business coach. And why not in life? This is the biggest one, because, you know, most of us are stuffed up from childhood, not because of our family, because they're doing the best that they can, or maybe sometimes not, but we make up all our lies about ourselves, you know, our disempowering beliefs. So, you know, and then we spend the rest of our lives, unless we do the work on ourselves, trying to prove our beliefs wrong, you know, so which could be another podcast in itself. And as this is a wellness podcast, what is your main wellness go-to that you must have to do?
Oh, that's an interesting question. There's so many things I could answer. I think I want to say being in nature, you know, because I grew up in London and I've always lived in London. And I just feel it's so important to connect, because we are part of the natural world, and that's where all the wisdom is held. So when we're around nature, we just come back into our more natural self, you know. So just even if it's a 20-minute walk, I do a lot of barefoot walking. So I try and wear shoes as little as possible. It's, you know, not warm in London today, but I'm still barefoot right now. So yeah, just connected to nature, remembering all the answers are inside of us. Everything is already there. You know, all the wisdom is already there, and it's just us creating space in our lives to tune in and find those answers, find that wisdom, and, you know, not be so conditioned to look for it outside of ourselves, not be so conditioned to give our power away and expect that the governments are going to do something for us, or your boss is going to do it for you, or whoever it is. It's like you have to empower yourself to find your own path and your own strength. And yeah, I think just being in nature is maybe the most direct way to find that aspect of yourself.
Yeah, that's a great answer, because I resonate with it, but maybe others won't. But yeah, I think today more and more people need to be in nature and find that connection with themselves and all that is, as you mentioned earlier. And if there was one thing that you could do or change to make our world a better place, what would that be?
Ah, what another great question. Well, I think it all begins with, we all need to have access to water for a start. There's like millions of people that don't even have access to clean water. So why are we doing all this stuff when, you know, our fellow humans don't even have clean water? That's just so shocking. So we all need water. We all need clean skies. We all need shelter and a safe place to live. And yeah, we all need clean food. So just taking all the chemicals out of the environment, all the non-chemical farming, all the non-organic farming. Yeah, I think that's probably because, like we started off by saying, that's the relationship to everything. That's going to change our bodies and the planet if we can, you know, move out of this, which is only, you know, it's normal to us because we've grown up with it. But they only started using this amount of, well, they started using chemicals and pesticides in the 50s, and it only started
Yeah,
really up in the 80s. So it's only 2 generations really where we've had this amount. So it's very sad and tragic right now. But you know, there's so many answers. I'm always seeing things online where you love, where like you know, I saw one where they made plastics out of mushroom fungi plastics the other day that obviously you can put
oh,
them in the ocean and then they just decompose. So they're saying, you know, it's a long way before they're actually ready to go into production, but people have made plastics out of mushrooms. So there's so many people, and that's what I really believe as well, is that there's so many people who came here to help with the shift. You know, we're going through this quantum shift, and there's
yeah,
so many of us that came to assist with that, and who have so many different answers in so many different areas, like you just mentioned the microbiologist you talked to. That's so out of my
yeah,
sphere of knowledge, but I'm sure if I had a conversation with them, we'd have so much in common in, you know, what we believe in. There's millions of people. Someone knows about sustainable architecture, someone knows about cleaning up the oceans. We're all here, we're all ready to help. It's just, yeah, getting that will of the people to really put these solutions into place.
yeah. I also think a lot of people just are not informed or educated. They don't realize what's going out there. And I think, you know, one of the good things about the internet is if you can do online talks, and this is one of
Yeah,
the reason I'm interviewing wonderful people like you, so that people, because there's so many charlatans out there, people, you know, who do a 1 day class and then they're teaching it or something like that.
yeah,
There's so much confusion. You don't know what is truth and what is not truth. And I like to interview people with lots of experience and wisdom, so people then can make an educated, informed choice.
right.
And, you know, and you find out new things. And it's like what you said today, that no, just because it's raw, you can eat warm foods, you
Yeah,
know, and a lot of people wouldn't know that. And just knowing it, you don't have to be all one, you know, and not the other. You can do it gradually and things.
yeah.
So, is there anything you would like to share before we close? Because I
Uh,
know you got so much
yeah, we covered a lot. Thank
knowledge
you
to
so much,
share.
Bobby. Just to say that we mentioned the Bali retreat already, but my new book is The Empowered Woman. And I think by the time this interview goes out, the website will be ready. So it's you know, again, it's all on the same theme. It's about as women just understanding ourselves better and understanding our biology. So this chapter is on stress, depression, relationships, monthly cycles, raising children, menopause. And you know, this has really come out of my, when I teach classes and hold workshops, it's mostly women. I'd say 80% women. You know, I
Yeah.
never advertise it as women only, but it's mostly women that are introduced to my work. And I just noticed that, you know, even when women are educated, like you're saying, and wanting to do the best for themselves and their families, they still aren't necessarily getting the results and the benefits that they're looking for. They still might be feeling tired and depressed and stressed. So really understanding why that is by looking at just how our modern lifestyles really aren't supportive to women's health, and that it's up to us to really understand ourselves and our bodies. And like we were saying, just go at a pace that works for us, do what works for us, and understand that that's a really important part of this change is just learning as women how to be sovereign in our lives and how to set clear boundaries and to I think for a lot of women, because we tend to be more empathetic, we tend to just think of others more. And then, definitely I grew up being told to, maybe not consciously, but definitely all the information around me was, you put yourself at the bottom of the list, you make sure everyone else is happy, everyone else is okay. And if there's any crumbs left for you, then, that's what you're going to get. And I think it's time now for women to change that paradigm and to say, the more I take care of myself, the more I can take care of others. So my self-care has to come first. And self-care can only really come through self-knowledge and self-understanding and knowing, what do I need to be happy? What do I need to feel well? And what do I need to feel supported? And then we can show up in our lives in the way that we want to show up, which is we want to be giving to everyone. We want to help everyone. But instead of getting burnt out and exhausted, then we can be that fountain of unconditional love that we're wanting to show up as. It's very difficult in this world. It's very difficult, especially in a city like London. So many people in disconnection, so much anger around, so much confusion, like you said, so much distraction, misinformation. So yeah, I really believe it's up to us to be the change. Is obviously I didn't invent that one, but be the change is something I really live by. We set the example, and that's how we make this shift, we make this change.
Thank you. And yeah, I'm looking at the lovely plants behind you because you're talking about being the change and being in nature, and you're living in a city, and some people don't have access to gardens and so forth. So it's nice to bring the garden inside and have nature inside, and people can be growing their herbs, even like mint and basil and whatever they choose on their windowsills, and bringing that. But yeah, it's about owning your power and remembering the beautiful goddess you truly are, and feeling safe to shine, because
Yeah,
playing small doesn't do any good, and being
right.
that beacon of light and being the leader that you came here to be. And um, if people are ready to make a change, which one of your book, because you mentioned Empowered Women, which I'll definitely be buying, because I'm sure it'd be very inspirational on many levels. But if they wanted to change their diet, which one of your books would you recommend they start with? Because I know you have so many.
Yeah, there's 5 recipe books. So Eat Smart, Eat Raw was the first one, and that came out in 2002. That's very simple. So if someone was looking for simple recipes, it was actually published in Australia. I don't know if you can still find that Australian edition, but it was published around 20 years ago in Australia. And then Raw Transitions is a 28-day guide menu plan to transitioning into raw. So it's the menu plan, all the recipes and shopping lists. So it starts off with a vegan diet with cooked foods, and then by the end of the 28 days, it's a fully raw diet. So that's one that you can kind of dip in and dip out of. Some people just like will do it. They won't necessarily do the whole 28 days in one go. They'll do a week and then come back to it and do another week, or do the 28 days and then cycle back through it. So yeah, that's just some guidelines of how to do what I believe is healthy, balanced raw foods.
Yeah. And I'll put all your, thank you for that. And I'll put all your social media links. Which one would be the best for them to contact you on?
Well, if people are
Oh,
on
your
Telegram,
website.
I have quite active Telegram chat. That's where I show up the most. We've got a lovely group on Telegram. I do have Instagram, but I try and stay off it as much as possible. So Telegram is the only place where I'm really kind of engaged. Yeah.
Cool. And
Oh,
yeah,
Substack. We've
so
got Substack now too.
which one you're on?
I've got a Substack
What
now
was
too, which is where I'm posting my writing now.
okay, that's cool. So yeah, thank you for that. And it's been an absolutely incredible chat, and so much wisdom shared. So thank you very much for giving up your precious time. And I just remembered though, everybody was asking me, your name is Kate Magic. Why magic, and what do you do to bring magic into your daily life, and how could you share and get people advice on what they should do to bring magic in their life?
Oh, thank you for that question. It was actually my nickname when I was younger. People call me Magic. So I reclaimed the name for myself and took it as it's my government name now. So it's on my passport and my driving license and everything.
Wow.
But I really believe in the magic. I think we come from a magical land. I think, at one time there were giants and unicorns and fairies and all of that was real. And I think what we've been told of our history is basically a lie. And there's so much more magic on this beautiful earth than we're really aware of. And I think we're all here to restore the magic. It's understanding that it's in us and it's in the earth. And maybe it's been sleeping for a while. But I really love visiting the sacred sites, the stones, like I mentioned, the pyramids. But there's so many sacred sites in England. It's covered in sacred stones. And yeah, just connecting into the magic of the land and the magic of us. I think that's yeah, really a
Yeah.
big part of the restoration is I guess it's believing in the non-physical realms, and that life is so much more. We've been in this period of materialism where everything's reduced to the material, and your power is in your status and your possessions, and that's so much a small part of what really is the human experience. And we are here to enjoy having a body and enjoy the sensory experience, but actually we can unlock so much more of that when we appreciate the non-physical realms that exist here for us.
Lovely. And how can we bring that magic in our lives?
I guess it's in your heart. I guess it's finding it in your heart. I call my approach compassionate curiosity. So I always try and come from the heart and have compassion for all living beings. And I always try and remain curious. So I don't come at things thinking I have all the answers and I know what's going on. I always come with an open mind and curiosity to see what I can learn and what I can receive through the interaction. So it's being open heart, open mind, compassionate curiosity.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And good luck with the launch of your next book and everything else that you're doing.
Thank you
And
so
thank
much.
you again for the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was, I'll just put this on. I just thought I'll leave it running just in case we have a nugget come up. Yeah, I actually lived in Egypt
Amazing.
for 6 months. Well,
Wow.
yeah, we were based on a yacht in Eilat, and we used to travel every week. It was a holiday boat. So my partner, I call him my husband, we've been together 21 years. He was the captain, I was the first mate, and we'd take him out on a 60-foot catamaran. So basically, four couples would come, didn't know each other. And at the end of it, my boss would get on and try and sell them a package. They'd already bought £60,000 they would have spent on holiday homes. I forget the name of it now. And then they come on, then they buy a membership for another 60,000. So it was like, okay. So my job was just to make people feel happy. And, I had to do the cooking. And I was like, oh my God, I had to go, yeah, 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 I love cooking. Yeah, I did O-level cookery, but I always had partners who did the cooking for me. So it was like we went out for a week's training, and I was like, they said, you can do the cooking. I said, oh, I learn more visually, so I'll watch. And then you're on your own. So it was amazing though. I just loved it. It was one of the happiest times of my life
Oh,
because
oh,
they'd come on every week, and we'd take them from Israel to Egypt to Jordan. And
wow.
then we'd work they'd be on for a week, and new lot come on the next week. We'd have a 1 week off, and on that week off we could go anywhere. So we spent a week by ourselves in Egypt and Jordan and different parts of Israel, and traveled different places. And we also spent time in Mallorca. But yeah, the energy was really high vibration. And last year when we took our camper, we hired a camper van because we're boaties, we used to look down on camper vanners and be like, oh, wouldn't that be terrible stuck in a camper van? When we got stuck here, a friend lent us his redeveloped ambulance into a camper van, and we absolutely loved it, and we got hooked. And it's just that freedom to be traveling in nature. You'd be in the middle of nowhere and you're going through the bush or going somewhere, and you don't know where you end up, and you just spend the night there. This is our experience. Not everybody are like that, because most people like to book into campsites. And we did a couple, and we're like, we're paying money to be with all these people. No, we just stay where we can. I guess it's the yachty in us, because when we had the week off, we could take the boat where we wanted as well. And yeah, just that sense of freedom. And what we've noticed with country people, because obviously in Monaco, I was doing events all the time, I had all the glamorous dresses. And you come here and people are wearing the same clothes for a week or two, especially because in the farms. And one of my speakers in the event we're doing November the 1st, he's the fish vet. He said, people just got to stop buying. They got to stop buying loads of clothes. They've got to stop buying junk. We've got to declutter.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry, I really need to go and use the bathroom. I'm sorry.
All right.
Thank you so
I'll
much.
be in touch. Lots of love.
Thank you.
Lovely to chat with you. Bye.
Bye.